Okay, first we'll start with, we always hear the words omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, correct? So are we all familiar with these words, what they mean, right? So it's this: God is all present, all powerful, and all knowing. So if you were to assess yourself, how do you look at the world? Do you look at the world as being just and righteous? Do you look at the world as being just full of struggles? Do you look at the world as confusion, right? Because if you're thinking in those terms, and there is confusion in the world, there absolutely is confusion, and there is anger in the world, and there is obviously hate in the world, and there is obviously wars in the world, and there are obviously people being killed. There are people that that look like they're dying and they're perceived innocent. So there are all these things, but does the world appear, and does the world feel just and righteous to you? Because if it doesn't, then somewhere with this omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, you don't feel the presence of God. Because if God is all-knowing, and God is all-powerful, and God is all-present, that means that there's nothing in this world that is not just or righteous. How can it be, right? If God is all-knowing, and God is all-powerful, and all-present, that means the person who has been murdered, the person who did the murdering, the presence of God is equal in both of them. But we don't see it that way because we have been living lifetime after lifetime after lifetime in a victim mindset. And what that means is that someone has to be wrong. Someone has to have done something wrong. Now, that does not mean that us on the yoga path are not, for karma is, so this whole thing is going to be about karma, but karma is not black and white. Karma is, I'd like to think of it as this infinite number of shades of gray. It's not black and white. Because if I know something and I go against it, the karma for me is greater than if I don't know something. It does not mean that karma is excluded. It does not mean, because ignorance is not bliss. But if I know that, okay, for example, let's just say if I went and I killed a saint or I killed an ant, right? The karma is going to be very different for those two actions. It's still murder. It's still killing. I mean, I've killed at least hundreds of earwigs this summer. I'd like to think that they came here so they could move on further and faster. But so if I knowingly do something, so if I know that ahimsa, nonviolence, is first, right, in the yamas, or I know that truthfulness is second. So I know my list of yamas and niyamas, but I completely ignore them because I'm seeking something for myself, then my karma is going to be greater than for someone who has no clue about being injurious to themselves and to others. So there are these infinite number of shades of gray. So karma can never be it will never be black and white, and it may never make sense completely to you. But this is where God is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. So if God is all-knowing, and he, she, whatever you want to call it, is all-powerful, then at any point, anything that we perceive as not just or righteous could stop, correct? If God is all-powerful, and there's a war that he did not want to happen, couldn't he stop it immediately? Yes, he could. But because we have karma that we have to work out. You know, I've said this before, and I've gotten a lot of eye raises. Everything that happened during the Holocaust was supposed to happen. Karmically, it was supposed to happen. Now, that does not exclude us from, if we have the opportunity to act appropriately, if we have the opportunity to do something to alleviate suffering, if we have the opportunity, this is dharma. Dharma is expansion. So if I have the opportunity to, if I was around during the Holocaust, if I had the opportunity to do something to save some people and I didn't do it, then I am going against dharma. It's adharma. I'm going against what I should do. I don't walk by and say, well, it's their karma. They're supposed to be tortured like this. This is what God wants, so let it happen. No, we have the power to do more. We have the power to act in a more dharmic way. And dharma is expansion. Otherwise, we're living in contraction, and that's adharmic. We are going against the grain of dharma. So when we think about our karma, right? Do you need to understand your karma? Do you really? I mean, think about that. That's a question to consider. Do I need to understand why I'm going through what I'm going through? Why? Why would I need to? This is what God wants. This is my karma. It could have happened 30 lifetimes ago. But I do need to know how to navigate through my karma. This is acting skillfully. This is handling life gracefully. I definitely need to know how to navigate through my karma. I don't need to know that whatever happened with Joe and me when he locked me in the cellar and he tortured me, I don't need to think back, well, 30 lifetimes ago, I did that to someone. Okay, this is making sense. No. Okay, so yeah, it was supposed to happen to me. So how do I navigate through that period of time that I'm locked in there? How do I navigate through that period of time the year after waiting for the trial? Do I navigate? Because being on the spiritual path does not mean that you're never fired upon. It means that you are fired upon because we're all fired upon. We're living. It's called life. We are constantly, if we're not getting blasted, maybe we're not trying hard enough, right? We want to get some blast. We want to get some knockdown, so we have to figure out how to stand up, right? This is not about going through life being complacent, letting life happen to us. Life is happening for us, so we want to get some of these kicks in the teeth, so to speak. So how do I handle going through the year after? Do I handle it gracefully? I don't need to go back and revisit when I did that to someone else, right? But I want to be able to, someone asked me once, it was a few months after everything had happened with Joe, and they said, how can you forgive him? And I said, he has so much hate inside himself. Why do I want to add extra hate? And I'm going to be the first recipient of that hate. And more than anything, he brought this karma to me that I wasn't expecting to happen, but how fabulous. My inner dweller knew that I was going to have the strength and courage to handle it. So how can I be angry at someone who brought my karma to me? If I'm angry at the bringer of my karma, then I'm living in a state of duality. I'm living in, you did me wrong. Now you need to pay for that. When I was talking to the prosecutors and they said, so what do you want to do? Like, what do you want us to go for? And I said, I don't care. I'm seeing this through to the end, but whatever happens the day of the trial, that has nothing to do with me. My job is to see it through to the end. If the jury finds him not guilty, that's fine. If the jury says, he has to go on probation for whatever it is, I'm not concerned with that. That's your job. My job is to get from A to B, and that's the day of the trial. The day of the trial, that's on you. Whatever happens after that, I'm not attached to it. This is being not attached to the fruits of your labors, but I felt very, very, very strongly about when I was working with Artemis and with the detective, and they're like, so, are you going to be able to go through with this? And I said, yes, I most definitely am. The man tried to kill me. Yes, I am going to see this through. And it's not only for me, but I'm putting that energy out there. If there's ever another person in this area or anywhere else that is doing in the same or similar situation, that energy is there for them to grab onto. Like attracts like, right? So if I am angry and I'm walking around in the world and I'm hating people, that energy is out there. We can't see it, but we gravitate to it. Whether it's the people we hang out with or whether it's just feeding our mind and we come home even more agitated than we left. Because like does attract like energy attracts like energy, which is why when you are on the path of yoga, you need to become more discerning about who you associate with, because it can drag you back down. It can pull you back into the depths of a deeper confusion. So this is why satsanga, one of the reasons why satsanga is very important. And then when you are doing your practice, you start to realize that you have this dispassion, you have this dislike, right? Not this hate, but like, no, I don't want to do that. That doesn't serve me. That's no longer good for me. So you navigate away from that. So as we go through your life, like if something is really tossing you around and really just got you down on your knees, you don't need to ask, why me, why me, why me? You need to ask your inner dweller, how can I navigate through this successfully? How can I navigate through this skillfully? Because that's what we're here to do. That breaks our binds with all these things that bind us and keep us stuck in the cycle, the samsara, right? Constantly coming back and doing the same thing over and over again. Death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth. And we're acting and doing the same things the same way because we've not changed the way that we think. Because what do we take with us when we die? Our mind. The mind attaches to the Atman and it goes out until the timing is perfect for that mind and Atman to create another body and come back to burn more karma or create more karma, right? One of the things that anytime that you are on your mat and you're really putting in some effort and you're really just focused on it, those times you're not creating karma in the world. It's really good, right? You're creating these deeper samskaras for this practice that you're doing, but you're not out actively involved in the world. And that's a positive thing. That's a very positive thing. So when we think about their different types of karma, you have your sanchita karma, your prarabdha karma, and your kriyamana karma. So sanchita, I learn a lot by association, and I've always done that way. So sanchita for me is stored. They both start with the letter S. So sanchita and stored both start with the letter S. So sanchita that you hear often, especially, I think most of us have read some version of the Bhagavad Gita, but the sanchita, the way that the yogis describe it is you have your quiver, right? And you have your arrows, and then you have your arrow that's shooting, and you have your arrow that's landed somewhere, right? So if we think of, and then the prarabdha karma is our active, or if you can, present karma, the present karma that we're going through. And then the kriyamana is the potential. So if I think of this prarabdha, I should have flipped the sanchita and the prarabdha, but so if I think of this prarabdha karma, this is the karma that I am going through at this present moment that I can't stop. I can't change that karma, but what I can change is how I negotiate through that karma, how I navigate through that karma. I can't change the karma. We were sharing a story one time where the man was walking by and there was a pundit who was also an astrologer, and he looked at him and he said, "You are supposed to eat today." And he thought, okay, I'm going to definitely not eat today. So he goes and he hides in the woods, he hides in the jungle. He ends up, some brigands find him, they pull him down, they force him to eat. He goes back to the pundit and he's like, wait, there's something to this. So he was going to eat today. Now, what if he had been doing abhyasa, right? What if he had been doing some sort of practice? Instead of being forced to eat by brigands, what if he would have said, okay, I'm fasting today from dawn till dusk, and then I will eat my evening meal. I will have it as prasad. very different. So he was destined to eat that day, but on one hand, he was literally force fed, right, by these brigands, by these hooligans to eat. Whereas if he had been doing a practice, that food would have been prasad. He would have recognized that food as a gift from God. So yes, there are karmas that we are dealing with right here, right now, but how we negotiate them depends on our practice. Are we even doing a practice kind of thing? Because if we're not doing a practice, I can guarantee you that you're going to come back next lifetime and do the same thing. When I sent that message out last week, right, about if you don't have time for a practice today, you're not going to have time for a practice tomorrow. If you don't have time for a practice tomorrow, guess what? Next lifetime, you're not going to have time for a practice. Guess what? Next time, you're going to be doing the same shit over and over again. Until at some point, you have reached rock bottom, I have reached rock bottom, and suddenly, oh shit, my practice is important. I really do need to do a practice, right? So you have this prarabdha karma. Riley and I were talking on our walk the other day about, so when Susan killed herself and she had arranged it for me to find her, Riley's sister. So when she did this, I pulled up outside of her house and I thought, I don't want to go in. She's dead. I don't want to go in. I know she's dead. And then wouldn't you know it, the weirdest thing, my car got a flat. As I was coming into the complex, right, the AAA guy who came to fix the flat, he actually was able to plug it, but it was just the little bit of like a bicycle, the reflector from a bicycle. And he said, I've never seen anything puncture a tire quite like this. So it's like, okay, I can't go anywhere. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I have to go in. It's my karma to go in. I have a flat tire, for God's sakes. What am I going to do here? So yogically, then I start thinking, okay, I have to go in, still hoping that she's not dead, and I maneuver my way through the house and it's full of these boxes and stuff. And I come around the corner and there she is hanging. So I had karma. I had to see that dead body. I had to see Susan. But because of that, Riley and I had this incredible experience. I'm face to face with this body. I'm calling 911. It's on a Thursday, September 3rd, actually. So that night, and Riley is in prison and he's dealing with COVID. So I had to tell Riley at that point, your sister committed suicide. She emptied your bank accounts. You have $136 in your account. She lost your car, your Toyota Prius that you love so much, not once, but twice, because she got it back because they repossessed it. She paid, got it back out, but she lost it again. So we're having this conversation. He's in prison, kind of like half out of it because he has COVID, right? And we're on 15-minute calls. So he has to call me back and I have to continue with the story where I left off. You have 1 minute. So he has to call me back. So we continue this conversation. And at this point, I'm in my mind, I'm dealing with seeing this dead woman, and that kind of like taking that is in the whole forefront of my mind. Riley, unknown to me, he asked Swamiji to help me. So this was Thursday. Friday night, I had very, very vivid dreams of Swamiji, and we were doing very particular mantras. And we did a whole series of mantras, and then we ended with my guru mantra, with Swamiji and myself doing my guru mantra together. And at that point, there was nothing left towards seeing Susan. It was like I had watched a horror film, whatever, back in high school. It was like something that was so insignificant. So Riley calls me at 7 a.m. and he says, hey, and I said, it's done. I knew exactly what he was going. I didn't know he had asked, but at that point I knew that he was going to tell me that it was going to be taken care of. And I said, it's already done. So I'm in Dayton. He's in London. We're having very similar dreams. He's seeing Swamiji in a dream where Swamiji is taking my head, right? And he's showing Riley that he's taking care of the situation. In my dream, Swamiji is with me, but we're doing this whole set of mantras. But by Saturday morning, so this happened Thursday evening, right before I taught class, actually. So it happens Thursday evening. By Saturday morning, there was nothing. It was my feelings. And I had said before that I understood what ghastly meant when I saw her hanging there, because she had put on all of her makeup for the day and everything. It was like, oh, this is ghastly looking. But had I not gone through the karma of seeing her, right, we would not have had the experience that we had. I would not have had that Swamiji coming and taking care of something. I don't know what the regular healing time is for seeing a dead body, but I'm sure it's more than 36 hours. And I was able to maneuver through that. I shouldn't say I was. Swamiji maneuvered me through that and let Riley see it. So what could have been something really ugly turned out really beautiful. But what if I had been like, oh, I can't believe she did this to me, right? I knew I shouldn't have gone in, but because yoga, I try to keep yoga in the forefront of my mind all the time, then it does help to guide my actions. Not always, but it's certainly, I try to use it as this driving force. So there is certain stored karmas that we have to deal with. But how do you deal with them? How do you navigate out of them? Is going to make you successful or not make you successful in moving forward, right? So like we can have this, say that we're in a relationship that we know is really bad. And I've had this conversation with someone a couple years ago, and the relationship is quite toxic. And he wants to leave the relationship, but he's like, but this is my karma. This is my karma. And I said, okay, let me put it this way. And we were walking, and I'll use streets around here because where we were walking wouldn't make sense to you. So I said, say that we're walking down Tulip, and I know that around the corner on Leasing, there's a man with a gun and he's going to shoot me. I know that. So I don't say, oh, well, that's my karma. Oh, I'm just going to walk by and let him put a few bullets in me, see what happens, because that's my karma. No. What if I say, okay, I'm going to turn and I'm going to walk down Spalding. It's a lot longer, but I'm going to go down Spalding and come back home. Because if I know that he's there, right? If I know that something is, if I'm in a relationship or if I'm in a job or if I'm in a house, whatever it is, right? Think of your life. If we know that we're in things that are not helpful to us, that are toxic to our spiritual growth, because your spiritual growth should be first and foremost. Everything else, secondary. God is first. That means your inner dweller is first. What is going to make you grow spiritually is first. Everything else comes in at not even a close second. So if I can see that this gunman's there, I don't walk into the gunman, right? If I know that I'm in a relationship that is bad for me, I don't say, it's my karma. I have to stay with this person. I bring so much happiness to him. That's so egotistical. Don't make yourself a fucking martyr. That's what we're doing, right? Then I can go out and say, oh, this relationship is so bad. This is awful. And then I rally my troops, right? I get everybody around me. Yeah, he is so rude to you. He's so mean. Why would you be with him? Well, I have to for the kids. No. What you need to do is step out of things that are not healthy for you spiritually, that will not help you grow spiritually. I'm not advocating divorce or advocating quitting your job, but I'm advocating you really analyze it and look at it and see, is this helping you spiritually? Maybe it's just a shift in the mind that can make you see that. Or maybe it's that the job and you have gone two different ways since you started doing your practice. Maybe it's that you and your partner have gone two different ways since you started doing your practice. But it's the peacekeeper who says, oh, I have to keep peace. That's my job in the family. I'm the peacekeeper. No, that's you contracting because you're afraid of confrontation. The moment we say, I have to do something, what you have to do is your practice. That's what you have to do is your practice, period. You must do your practice. Everything else will work itself out. And you will be able to handle life in a much better way if you are doing your practice. So then you have your Prarabdha karma. And that is then you have the stored karma, right? The sanchita. So that's when I have this karma that's stuck in my quiver, right? I'm getting ready to do something with it. So my sanchita will change, and it can change based on what we do presently. Isn't that freeing? So if this is another shade of gray, if I am doing my practice diligently, not only when something happens that, like the South Indian proverb that says, what came from my head took my hat, right? So when we have this boatload of karma coming at us, but instead of having it take our head off, it just took our hat because we've handled it so successfully. So this is where, because we're all connected, right? We're all one. So if I am doing my practice and I am committed to my growth, I am committed to moving forward, my karmas in the future, that's going to change. That is going to, because what happens is I'm not so tied to the fruits of my labor. You keep track of everything that you do. I keep track of everything I do. It's not God up in heaven with the book of life, right? That's what we've heard. God's up in heaven with this book of life, or at least that's what I heard growing up. And keeping track of all of our goods and bads. It's a checklist kind of thing. No, you keep track of that yourself. It's called your inner dweller, which is how you set up for your next lifetime. So the more you are attached to the fruits of your labors, guess what? The more those things are going to come back to you. But so there's no escaping it. If we want to detach from the fruits of our labors, once again, everything goes back to our practice. We have to understand ourselves. We have to know ourselves. So if I don't understand what I'm doing, I'm going to be attached to what I'm doing. Good, perceived good or perceived bad, whatever it is, I become attached to it. This is, if I think of myself as just a really vile, evil person, a bitch, whatever it is, and I'm thinking that, it's that self-fulfilling prophecy. I have to do things to prove that to myself. I can't just say one day, I'm a child of God, if I've been feeding that I manipulate people and I con people and I use people to get my way. I use people for attention, right? I use whatever it is. I have to keep doing that because I fed myself so that's for so many lifetimes, that's what I believe. So of course I'm going to keep acting that way. That just makes sense. I have to do what I believe. If I believe I'm a child of God, I will act differently. If I don't believe I'm a child of God, right, then I don't believe really in karma either. So I will act in a way that is in accordance with my belief system. There's this is one of my favorite stories on karma. There was a man who had lived in an ashram, and he was a monk and a sannyas, and he had lived there for years and years and years, and he had gone to town. And he was coming back, and then there was the village kind of thief drunk that was coming in the opposite way. And right at the same time where they passed, the man who was headed back to the ashram stepped on a huge thorn and got it in his foot. And he bent down. He's like, oh, because it was this massive thorn. And the guy who was the village thief, the village drunk, looked down and saw a gold coin. He was like, whoa, I found a gold coin. Yay, this is fabulous. So the sannyas and the swami, the monk, went back to the ashram, and he was talking to his teacher. He's like, what just happened? I've spent 30 years doing practice here. Explain this to me. And his teacher said, well, you can't see, but I can see. Today, you were supposed to die. But because of all the practices you've been doing, you got a thorn in your foot. Today, he was supposed to be made mayor, but because he had been stealing from so many people and lying and cheating, he only found a gold coin. So this goes back to the practice that we do can change the karma that comes to us. I mean, for me, when I think about that and have thought about it, it's like, oh shit, this practice is important stuff, right? Because I can work, we get into the spine, we get into the endocrine system, we get into the mind and we change it. But if we don't do anything, we're never going to change. And we're just going to keep doing those linear moves, right? Just constantly, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Like I said, I should never say never. Never is a really strong word. It's going to take lots of lifetimes, whereas we could eliminate a few if we did our practice. And that is pretty exciting, I think. I'm all for eliminating two lifetimes, 3 lifetimes, whatever it is, right? That, if you want a life hack, there's no life hacks out there for enlightenment. I don't care how many stones you wear. I don't care how many malas you wear. I don't care how many cold plunges you take. I don't care how many whatever you do, right? That you think is going to get you somewhere quickly. It will not. You're feeding old habits. You're feeding old samskaras. So if you want a life hack, do your practice. Do your practice. Your practice is what is going to sustain you. Your practice is what is going to meet you at the end, at your last breath. You're not going to be the cold plunge. Tell me, how is a cold plunge or wearing crystals going to help me cross over my unconscious mind? It's not. It's going to create more confusion. This is another karma story that Riley and I were talking about yesterday when we were walking. So Parvati and Shiva, we know that they're the two beloveds that, they're Shakti and Shiva. And so Parvati is looking down and she sees this beggar. And for some reason, he just pulls out her heartstrings. And she's looking at him and she just feels so sad for him. And she nudges Shiva out of meditation. And he's like, what is it, my dear? She's like, I look at him, I just feel so sorry for him. I feel so sad for him. What can we do? You can do something, my lord. And this beggar's walking through the village. And she said, put some gold in front of him. And he's like, okay. So he puts it down, he relents, he puts it down there. And right at that time, the beggar's like, I wonder what it's like to be blind. Let me shut my eyes and walk. And he walks right past the pot of gold. And she was like, see. And she's like, no, you can do this again. You can do it again. Let's do it again. And so he's like, okay. So he puts it down. And right as he puts it down in front of him again, the beggar's like, I wonder if blind people can skip. So he starts skipping and he skips over the pot of gold, right? And it goes through this on and on and on. And she was like, there's some karma that they just have to deal with. And his karma is not to have gold in this lifetime. And Riley and I were reading one of Swamiji's books last night. And one of the things that he was talking about is just that when we pity, right, something, we make them weak. We make someone weak. When we are, Swamiji said very clearly, I am someone that you can lean on that teaches you so that you don't lean, that teaches you not to lean. But if I pity someone, if I make them a victim, I have made them lean on me. That's a problem. That is a huge problem. Lean on me. Right? Why do I want someone to lean on me? My God, it's fucking hard standing on my own. I don't want someone leaning on me. Why would you want someone leaning on you? Why do you want someone needing you? Because of your own sense of lack. It's much easier to say, yeah, it was so rough. Come on, we'll get through this together. We've got this kind of thing. Instead of saying, look, you've got to navigate through this. For some reason, we don't need to figure out why it happened, but it happened, and you've got to figure out how to go through it. And when we're in a group, when we're in a community like this, we have a responsibility to do that for each other. We have a responsibility to help each other stand on their own 2 feet, not to make someone weak and crippled, because that's what we do when we pity someone. But it goes back to, I'm not here to not help, right? Because of ahimsa. But I'm not here to have someone lean on me. I don't want to lean on someone. I don't want to give my power. I picked this. I picked what is happening to me. Why do I want to give my power away? And then, oh, wow, she's so great, or he's so great. They really helped me do this, blah, 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 blah. No, you've given your power away and you've taken power from them because you didn't have enough power. And I'm not talking about the worldly power, right? I'm talking about the power of standing on your own 2 feet. If I make someone think that they're reliant on me, I've taken, because now suddenly they think, wow, I'm so special. Look what I did. And I'm getting their adoration. I'm getting their praise. They think I'm so special. Right? Why do you need to have someone think you're special? If you're doing the right thing and they don't think you're special, I think that's spectacular. Right? But we get caught because we have such a sense of lack. We get caught in wanting someone to think, build me up, please. Tell me how wonderful and fantastic I am, please. I'm waiting. And then they don't do it and we get pissed. But when they do it, it feeds our ego and we want more of it. So be mindful of pity. Be mindful of making someone a victim in your life. Be mindful of you seeking pity from someone. Be mindful of you making yourself a victim to get attention from someone. Are there questions on the sanchita, the prabda, and the kriyamana? We kind of get the feeling. So once the prabda goes out, right, we can't change the trajectory of the arrow. It's gone out. We can't suddenly change that. If it's going to hit the oak tree over there and it's been released from my bow, I can't change it. But if I work with, right, my other karmas, if I work with doing my practice, instead of hitting the oak tree, right, when I fire that next arrow, perhaps it goes down to the ground instead of hitting the oak tree. But that takes doing my practice if I want to change that. Because that will then change my stored karmas. And that will then change the trajectory of where they go. This is going back to Ida and Pingala, or not going back to, this is Ida and Pingala also work with how we look at life. So if our left nostril is always blocked or blocked more than the right nostril, you're going to view life differently. If your right nostril is blocked more often than your left nostril, you're going to look at life more, life's going to feel very different to you. We want to have that balance, the Sushumna, we want to have the balance of the Ida and the Pingala, because then that lets us look at life more objectively. That lets us see, I don't need to understand God's plan. I am this tiny little aspect of God. How can I understand and see the potential of all of God's plan? I don't need to. But what I need to do is trust it. And when I can get my Ida and my Pingala more balanced, then I can have more of that trust in God's plan. Now, this is, so we know that karma means action. And think about this. Actions that we perform in the past are going to create mental impressions, which are going to lead to this future actions, which is what we just said, right? So if I am doing actions that honor, so I'm feeling like useless dirtbag, or I'm feeling like some sort of scoundrel, some sort of bum, whatever. And I'm going to do actions that keep building that up, keep building those impressions up inside of me. So the next time I come back, those past actions they're going to lead me on a trajectory to act in the same way in this lifetime. We don't come with a clean slate, but we can clean the slate. But we certainly don't come with a clean slate. How do we clean the slate? Practice. But we do not come with a clean slate. We come with the slate filled with our impressions from previous lifetimes. So everything you're doing now are based on things that you've done in the past. So what are you doing that is feeding things inside of you that aren't helpful for your growth? Right? Are you a martyr? Are you a victim? Are you a jerk? Whatever it is, right? We need to analyze ourselves so that we can look at ourselves and see ourselves more clearly so that we can begin to clean the slate. So then the next lifetime, we come with that slate, but maybe there's a little less on it. So maybe we come with a little more clarity next lifetime. But if I'm not doing anything, it's just not going to happen. So abhyasa. When we think of abhyasa, we think of practice. I've been thinking about this. What if we think of abhyasa as our practice, right? But it's this ardent, this sincere, this dedicated effort to retain our shanti, our peace. I'm doing my practice to maintain my peace. I'm putting effort into living to maintain my peace. Does that motivate you maybe a little more to get on the mat and do it? If I'm doing this so that I can be more peaceful, I've been asked before, what is God to me? God to me is peace. God can be masculine or feminine, whatever, but it's my inner peace. You can say Atman. The Atman is always content, right? The Atman doesn't get riled. The ego gets riled, but the Atman doesn't. So when I sit down to do my practice, I'm doing it so that I can hopefully maintain more peace throughout the day. Not a matter of beating myself up if I failed miserably, but I'm putting in some real dedicated effort to maintaining that peace throughout the day. And then we have Vairagya and Viveka. So Viveka is this discrimination. Once again, you will only cultivate Viveka if you do a very sincere practice. Viveka is this discrimination between Shreya and Preya. Shreya is the things that we do that are good for us that can feel hard at the time. Preya are the things that we do that are not good for us but can feel very pleasurable at the time. Right? I can go and do a hit of acid and it might feel pretty good for about 12 hours. But it's not going to be good for my practice in the long run. I can go and I can take some Molly, right? And it's going to feel really fabulous. It's going to feel amazing. But I should be able to get that feeling doing my practice. But if I have this habit of doing these things, it's going to keep me from doing my practice. So then it's Preya that I'm seeking. Preya is pleasures, worldly pleasures. Think of the double P's, Preya, pleasure, worldly pleasures that we seek that give us those momentary glimpses of something that we think makes us happy. But true happiness lasts. True happiness doesn't change. Right? We seek sex because we seek attention because we're pleasure seeking. Good food because we're pleasure seeking. Right? When you live in an ashram, the food is very simple. And I'm very grateful that Riley is such an excellent cook because the food is great. But living at ashrams, the food is very, very simple. Sabzi, rice, and dal. You have a vegetable, you have rice, and you have dal. And once a week you get, at some of the ashrams that I lived at, you get this really kind of heavy, dense bread. So you certainly wouldn't eat a lot of it. It was so dense. It was like, oh. But you look forward to Saturday because it's granola day. And you're like, yes. Something besides, you have suji or you have oatmeal in the morning. So yeah, I mean, the food, because the food can lead you away from the practice too, if you don't have the right relationship with it. Anything can lead you away from the practice if you don't have the right relationship with it. So you have to have, the world is for us, but it's not for us to own. So enjoy it, but you don't own it. So if you're not doing any practice, you will not have any ability to discriminate between what is good for you and what is not good for you. So I know that Shreya, right, doing my practice is good for me. So I want to live my life doing things so that I can do my practice. So it means going to bed early. It means not this, you guys are my social life. And my mom, if you count that. But I don't have a social life. I choose not to have a social life because it takes me away from my practice. I don't want to go out and spend hours shopping. I find it very discombobulating to my mind, and it takes me out of my space, my practice space. So personally, I want to eliminate my time in the world as much as possible because it makes it harder when I get on my mat to do my practice. So my days of doing Molly and acid and mushrooms and all that other stuff that I did for a period of time is gone because it doesn't feed me anymore. And what did it feed me, right? If I go back and look at all of that stuff, and I've said this before, I wish that I had heard Swamiji say in my 20s that you should only have sex with someone you love. Because I can look back and think of definitely several sexual encounters that I wouldn't have had. But I can also look back and identify why I was having them. I needed something from that person that I wasn't giving to myself. So let me get it. Let me take your energy because I don't have the ability to give it to myself. But the more we stand on our own 2 feet, the more we don't, because the world props us up, right, with pleasures. But the more I stand on my own 2 feet, I don't need to be propped up by worldly pleasures. It's not important to me. Then that leads to vairagya. And vairagya is this dispassion, but it's dispassion to our samskaras, our impressions. It's dispassion to our aversions. It's dispassion to our ragas and our dveshas, right? Our attachments and our aversions. We no longer have that. I need this for me. I don't need this for me. I need this for my family. I don't need this for my family. So where we want these things, but when we do the practice, it goes back to, we don't need to understand God's plan. But what we do need to do is we need to cultivate this ability to accept God's plan for what it is, however it is, and be okay with it so that we handle it gracefully. I'm not saying we don't do anything, because there are times that God's plan requires you to take action. God's plan requires you to not be the peacekeeper in the family, right? God's plan requires you to stand up and take action. But if you have no ability to look at things objectively, you have no ability to discriminate, you have no ability to not be attached, then you will never be able to get to any of that space of accepting God's plan. God's plan is great when it works in your favor, but God's plan is not great when it doesn't work in your favor, because you ultimately don't believe in karma and reincarnation. You don't believe in the cycle of death and rebirth, death and rebirth. You don't believe that the impressions that we bring with us are impaling us and moving us forward in ways that you only will have control over if you start doing your practice. What time is it? Well, that was a little longer than I thought. Yes.
So you do 2 practices a day, so you do 5 minutes now. That gives you a chance to sit, watch your thoughts. When you get up and you're going back to doing that, what's the best way to sort of that negative self-talk or thoughts or becoming based a lot?
For me, I find if I'm sliding down a slippery slope, and you're definitely right, 2 practices a day are so important. Minimum, you've got to have 2 practices a day. They can be shorter, but you have to commit to 2 practices a day. When I'm sliding down that pit of negativity, if I pause and think of all these things that I am grateful for, it helps pull me back out of the pit of negativity. I was just writing about this in the blog that's going to be coming out on the website. So last month, and I've talked about this before, I've been working on the website and learning the SEOs, that search engine optimization stuff and everything. And there for a while, I don't know, it was probably 2 or 3 days, I was in this pit of like, oh my God, I don't want this. This is hard, blah, 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 blah. And going into this, why am I spending my time doing this kind of thing? So I was in this real like, and then I started thinking about things and more objectively, right? And started watching my breath when I would go and sit down at the computer. And it's interesting because then you can start to look at things objectively and think, okay, how incredible that I get the opportunity to, if I say that I want to serve Swamiji and the tradition, what a great way to serve Swamiji and the tradition. Because it may be not any of you even look at the website, but maybe someone in Alaska looks at the website and it gives them something that they need, right? It gives them some connection to Swamiji. Then wow, but if I'm not doing it for the right reason, then I get caught up in my negativity. And this goes back to the 6 streams of emotions that are fed by the 4 primitive urges. And the biggest urge that for this particular thing was this sense of self-preservation. Okay, so what if I can't do this? What if I'm not smart enough to figure this out? What if it looks dumb? What if this? And it's like, this is what has been placed on my plate. So I need to look at it. So then instead of focusing on all the negative things, look at all these incredible things that I have been given in this lifetime, that I have been given, all these karmic experiences that have given me so much, that if I look at that, it immediately, I can get myself choked up thinking about how grateful I am for the things that I've experienced and the things that I've had in this lifetime, that it makes me, so when I'm in that space of gratitude, then it's like, wait, this is all part of God's plan. So God obviously wants me. My inner dweller picked this. So why can't I do this lovingly, right? This goes to skillfulness in action, which would be another lecture. But it's shifting. If we can pause and we can shift into that feeling of gratitude, of being grateful, then life seems so much better. Life seems so much more manageable. And when I am feeling grateful, I'm also feeling generous because I'm feeling abundant. I'm feeling very abundant. And when I feel abundant, things just flow. And that means that if I'm feeling abundant, I don't have the worries about working on the website. Then it becomes actually enjoyable. Then it becomes, oh man, thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn these things. I don't know when I'm ever going to use them again, but thank you. Because not only have I learned something, but it's also made me refresh and go through and look at things like we're writing these blogs, right? I mean, it's things that get you out of your comfort zone. And when you get out of your comfort zone, you have to look at yourself. So to make it a very short answer, if I'm feeling really negative or really about something, and it doesn't always happen, but if I can shift and start, even if it's just mentally going through them in my head, listing all these things that I am so grateful for. I'm so grateful that I saw Susan hanging there, right? Because of what transpired afterwards. I wouldn't want to change that karma at all. I would never want to change the karma of what I experienced with Joe. I would never want to change the karma of having a dad who was physically abusive, because it has given me so much richness in this life. It has given me so much to be, whoa. And it's going back to, if I can forgive myself, then I will forgive any perceived wrongdoing, because that wrongdoing, right? And saying that in quotes, that wrongdoing is only a bringer of my karma. I need to forgive myself because I did that to someone in some lifetime. So if I can forgive myself, then certainly I have no animosity towards the person who gave it to me. That was God giving me the opportunity to pay back what I needed to pay back. I mean, that's a Jai Shri Ram. That's a moment. Does that answer that question, Riley?